Hello students, welcome back to my class. Today we are going to study two letters from France by Helen Maria Williams. Helen Maria Williams, as you know, was a late 18th century novelist, poet, and also a prominent prose writer, and particularly she wrote a good number of letters. And here we are going to discuss about her two volumes of letters she wrote from France during the French Revolution. Maria Williams was highly influenced by John Locke, William Wordsworth, Shelley, and all those British intellectuals and writers who were the champions of democracy and individual freedom. So, in her poems in particular, she has celebrated that individual freedom and the spirit of democracy, which she has picked up from across the continent, from Spain to France to England and everywhere. And she also was influenced by the spirit of the romanticism that was coming at that time and the representation of the enlightenment which was very much in vogue in that time. So in her writings we can find that going against the conventional religious dogmatic approaches to life, she is celebrating the life both as a dissenter as well as a democrat. And these two letters was caused by her first-hand visit to France on the occasion of the Federation or the first anniversary of the fall of Bastille, as well as the acceptance of the Constitution by Louis XVI. And you know that the French Revolution was a historical watershed in the human history and the humanity. And before going to France, she had her interaction with the French Revolution through two persons, particularly Augustin du Fossé and Monique Cockrell. Augustin du Fossé, though, belonged to the feudal royal family, but she was also a champion of democracy, and in his life also she wanted to bring the spirit of freedom. By marrying Monique Cockrell, an ordinary girl from the society, who was not belonging to the feudal society. She revolted against that convention, and for that he was punished. He was imprisoned, and he fled to England with his wife. And they came in contact with Maria Williams, and Maria Williams, with his own democratic spirit, found a right nerve in the French Revolution. So, to experience the first hand, she went to France in 1790, and she reached in Paris by a vessel which was carrying the mail, and she reached there fortunately on the very day of the Federation. So, the first letter from the first volume is bringing out his excitement that I arrived at Paris by a very rapid journey the day before the Federation. So, she was extremely excited to be there, considering herself to be very fortunate and lucky. I shall henceforth put this piece of good fortune into the opposite scale and reflect how many disappointments it ought to counterbalance. That how much disappointment she had to counterbalance if she would not have come to visit this place on this historic occasion. Had I not reached Paris at the moment I did reach it, I should have missed the most sublime spectacle which perhaps was ever represented on the theatre of this earth. So, in this letter, she is providing her excitement, and at the same time, she is also trying to present a very poetic spirit in narrating the event that was unfolding before her own eyes. That she was a poet, but she is considering herself in an apologetic manner in this volume of letters, not to be counted with the poets like Wordsworth and Shelley or Coleridge. But definitely we find in her letters there is the poetic sensibility, there is the poetic sublimity being expressed time and again. Then she is promising, like a true modern day journalist, I shall send you once a week the details which I promised when we parted, though I am well aware how very imperfectly I shall be able to describe the images which press upon my mind. So she is so much excited, she is feeling so much thrilled, and she is finding the inadequacy of her expression to express her spirit, her feelings. It is much easier to feel what is sublime than to paint it, and all I shall be able to give you will be a faint sketch to which your own imagination must add coloring and spirit. So, like a true artist, she is apologizing that she can't produce the exact thrill, the exact throbbings of her heart before the reader, and she is requesting the reader to add their own imagination to realize the excitement on her part. The night before the Federation, by way of the prelude to the solemnities of that memorable day, the Te Deum was performed at the Church of Notre Dame by a great number of musicians than have ever been assembled together, excepting at Westminster Abbey. So she is making a comparison between the two grand churches of England and France, Westminster Abbey and Notre Dame, and she is telling it is really, really very happy moment on her part to be witness to gathering of such a great number of musicians to sing the Te Deum before the night of the Federation. Te Deum was simple and majestic, the music highly expressive and had the power of electrifying the hearers. So she is describing the very spirit of the Parisians in particular and the French in general in celebrating this first anniversary of the breaking down of the fort of Bastille, which is a symbolic presentation of the French Revolution, from where the revolution started. By recalling the images of that consternation and horror which prevailed in Paris on the 13th of July 1789, the day before on which the Bastille was taken, the words were, as well as I can recollect what follows. And she is also trying to give us a picture of the 13th July, because the Estates General was convent, which was converted into the National Assembly on 11th July 1789. But Louis XVI dismissed the Chief Minister, Necker, and from 12th July there was the non-stop National Assembly being conducted to protest against the monarchical behavior and to press for their demands. So on 13th of July, it was full of horror because people, they gathered in large numbers on the streets, and the words were, as well as I can recollect what follows. People, your enemies advance with hostile sentiment, with menacing looks. They come to bathe their hands in your blood. And the speech was being given by the rebels to motivate the people that you come forward because the enemy is loose. It is going to commit violence, massacre. Therefore, seize your arms, rise from the inaction in which you are plunged and fly to the combat. God will combat with you. So with those words, they encourage the rebels to come forward and to fight. And in this way, the 13th July 1789 was a horrible night. The whole of the France was tense and horror-stricken. And on 14th July, the Bastille prison, the fort where the prison was situated, was being violated and it was destroyed. So, in the first letter, what we find? We find that Maria Williams is writing like a modern day reporter, a modern day reporter who is reporting the excitement, the feelings, the spirit of the population on the boiling of their mind, who are going to celebrate their first success. At this moment, the audience appeared to breathe with difficulty. Every heart seemed frozen with terror, till at length the bell ceased, the music changed its tone, and another recitative announced the entire defeat of the enemy. And the whole terminated after a flourish of drums and trumpets with an hymn of thanksgiving to the Supreme Being. So she is bringing out that as an excellent writer who can very easily, very fluently represent that period of turmoil in France with a very positive note. As an avid supporter of the rebellion, she is there to report it back at home to the people of England what was going on in the soil of France. The second letter, it was the letter 1 from volume 2, is also the letter that is celebrating the signature of the constitutional monarchy by Louis XVI on the 27th of September 1791. And in between, Helen Maria had returned to England and again went back to France. And here she is writing, I again take up the pen to write you at the chateau of Monsieur Dufosse, from which place I last year sent you the history of his misfortune. So in this letter, she is introducing her host at France and her acquaintance in England, in London, Augustine Dufosse and Monique Cockrell. And she is telling in this letter that how she had told about their misfortune, how they were hunted and they fled to London. And now that the rebels have captured the power, so they have come back to France, and from their chateau, she is reporting, she is writing this letter. Those misfortunes which have led me to love as well as admire the revolution, for you know we are so framed that while we contemplate the deliverance of millions with a sublime emotion of wonder and exultation, the tears of tenderness and throbbings of sympathy are reserved for the moment when we select one happy family from the great national group. Maria Williams is identifying herself with all those lovers of freedom and democracy, and she is calling it as the great national group. For her, there is no boundary of political, social, or cultural limitations. So she is telling that all these lovers of democracy and freedom, they had encountered various misfortunes, and now that they have come together, this historic French Revolution has given the right platform for these people to be unified. I have beheld with awful astonishment the sun of liberty spreading its broad blaze over the French hemisphere, but I have traced with inexpressible delight that benignant beam has chased every cloud of calamity from the dwelling of Mons Dufosse. And she is both consoling Monsieur Fosse as well as herself that all his calamities are now being chased by this sunlight which has come in the form of freedom. It seems the recompense of my French patriotism that I have on several occasions had the good fortune to witness those scenes of general felicity in which it requires but common sensibility to partake. And she is also talking about the French sense of general felicity, and she is informing in this letter to the people of England about the king accepted the constitution, the constitutional monarchy which was forwarded by the National Assembly, the king was forced to accept, and that information has come to Paris. When the courier arrived with his intelligence, the cannons were immediately fired, the bells of all the churches rung. And the moment this news came that Louis XVI had accepted the constitution, that was a great euphoria on the streets of Paris. People celebrated by ringing the bells in the church, by displaying their joy on the crowding streets. And I observed some of the people who were too poor to contribute a portion of wood because there were bonfire, and people, even the poor people, coming with a portion of wood, bring for their offering a part of an old bedstead or a leg of a broken chair from their old furnitures in the house. They have also contributed something because they wanted to be a part of this historical day. They wanted to be the part of this historical nation. Strangers stopped and congratulated one another in the streets, which resounded with cries of exultation. Vive le roi des Francois! Vive la nation! And the celebration of the nation and the celebration of the emperor, but the celebration of the nation dominated all other celebrations. In the afternoon, Te Deum was sung in the cathedral. 800 electors to the department who were at that time assembled at Rouen walked in procession. So people in different parts of France were celebrating this historic occasion of the constitution in different manner. In Te Deum, there was again the singing of the hymns. And in Rouen, there were people, 800 people walking in procession. It was impossible to witness this religious solemnity and reflect on the greatness of the occasion which had called so immense a multitude together. So many people coming out to the streets celebrating this occasion of freedom. And having completed the glorious work of a free government without catching the enthusiasm which beat high in every bosom. Everyone was enthusiastic. Everyone was high on the spirit. Indeed, living in France at present appears to me somewhat like living in a region of romance. So she is comparing this excitement, this experience in France with the true romance. Events the most astonishing and marvelous are here, the occurrence of the day, and every newspaper filled with articles intelligence. And she is going on describing that excitement, that euphoria, and the motives which most powerfully stimulate the mind in its ordinary state seem repressed in consideration of the public good, and every selfish interest is sacrificed with fond alacrity at the altar of the country. And she is telling that all selfishness, it has been sacrificed with fond alacrity at the altar of the country. Everyone is for the nation. Personal interests are sacrificed. Everyone is coming out of their personal limitations to celebrate. I sometimes think that the age of chivalry, instead of being passed over, and she's reminding the readers that as if she is experiencing that medieval age of chivalry, which is no more past but again coming back to France at this moment. Notions of loyalty, honor, and gallantry, which are as little as it dwarfs giants and imprisoned damsels, but in its noble contempt of sordid cares, in the spirit of unsullied generosity, and its heroic zeal for the happiness of others. The true gallantry, the true medieval chivalry has come in the form of unsullied generosity and heroic zeal for happiness of others. So that is a great spirit that France has brought to the experience of the whole humanity. The completion of the new government has been celebrated by general demonstration of joy throughout the whole kingdom, and thus begins under the auspices of liberty the constitutional reign of Louis XVI. So this is an auspicious occasion she is reporting. It is said, but the final part of her letter is full of irony. She is telling Abbe Mouret, the chief priest of Notre Dame, who left France as soon as the constitution was accepted, is going to Rome. He went to meet Pope, and the people of France are thinking that he will be given a red hat as customary on the part of the Pope to present to all his representatives in different parts of Europe, and it will make him redden. That means he will be ashamed when the whole people of France are celebrating their freedom. This Abbe Moody is going to the Pope, and he will be ashamed for his work. So, in this way, she is presenting in the letter the contemporary spirit, and she is bringing out the events as if in a live telecast in modern day period. With her imagination, with her selective images, she is bringing it very vividly before the people. And with her awareness about the difference between what is felt and what she is representing, she is also inviting the reader to participate with their own imagination to make it a great event for themselves. And she is very clear that she doesn't have the creative resources to capture the experience as it felt, but at the same time, she has that belief in the reader that they can make it very mellifluous through their own imagination. And the first letter, we find she presents an intensity that suggests the feeling of harmony between the whole humanity. And the second letter is stressing on the importance of freedom, the importance of the constitution, the changes that are necessary for the future, that are making France at that contemporary period the leader of the mankind. Therefore, these two letters, they are not only historical records, but they are also personal experiences as well as the reporting style with simple language, with the experiences being shared on the excitement, but at the same time having the balance between the excitement and the restraint. So, these are beautiful letters written by Maria Williams, and which can be considered as the beginning of modern day reporting. From these two letters, questions can be asked about the style of Maria Williams as well as the writing of letters on the occasion of French Revolution, that what events of French Revolution are being depicted by Maria Williams. I hope you people will be able to answer these things very easily.